Regardless of whether you were a woman, a man, or a child, if you committed even the smallest mistake, you would face punishment. You would be subjected to devices capable of tearing you apart or breaking your bones. The breast ripper was one of the most horrifying torture devices used in medieval times, designed specifically to cause pain and mutilation to women. It consisted of iron claws or hooks attached to a handle resembling a crude set of pincers. The device was heated until it was red hot, then placed onto the victim's breast. Once in position, the torturer would slowly pull the handles apart, forcing the sharp hooks to tear into the flesh. This caused excruciating, unimaginable pain and often led to severe, permanent injuries. The purpose of the breast ripper went beyond just physical torture. It was also intended to humiliate the victim and send a brutal message, especially in cases of accusations like adultery or witchcraft. The sheer terror and shame it inflicted made it a powerful tool for intimidation. Victims could suffer not only from the immediate agony, but also from lasting psychological trauma due to the disfigurement and violation. Despite its gruesome nature, this device is a stark reminder of how torture was used to control and punish in medieval society, often with little regard for human dignity. The breast ripper stands out as a particularly cruel example of the brutality inflicted on women during that era. The Judas Cradle was one of the most brutal and slow forms of medieval torture. The device was essentially a large, pyramid-shaped wooden seat mounted on a sturdy frame. The sharp tip of the pyramid was designed to fit into the victim's most sensitive and vulnerable areas, usually the anus or vagina. The victim, often stripped naked, was forced to sit on this pointed structure. What made the Judas Cradle particularly cruel was the slow and relentless pressure applied. The victim's full body weight would press down on the sharp tip, causing intense pain and tissue damage. Over time, the point would stretch and tear the flesh, causing severe injury. In many cases, the torturers would gradually raise the victim off the seat, only to lower them back down repeatedly, prolonging the agony. This torture wasn't just about physical pain. It was also designed to humiliate and break the victim's spirit. The slow, agonizing nature of the device meant that torture sessions could last for hours or even days, depending on how much suffering the torturer wanted to inflict, or until a confession was extracted. The psychological torment was intense. Victims lived in constant fear of the device, knowing any movement or shift could cause unbearable pain. The Judas Cradle stands as a grim reminder of the lengths to which medieval torturers would go to punish, control, and terrify. The Pear of Anguish is one of the most horrifying and cruel torture devices from medieval times. It was designed to cause extreme internal pain and damage, targeting the body's most sensitive and vulnerable areas. The device itself was shaped like a pear, hence the name, with a hollow metal body divided into segments that could be expanded using a screw mechanism at the top. This device was inserted into a victim's mouth, anus, or vagina, depending on the accusation or punishment intended. Once inside, the torturer would slowly turn the screw, causing the segments of the pear to expand outward. As the device widened, it tore and crushed the internal tissues, causing excruciating pain and severe injury. The Pear of Anguish was particularly feared because it caused not only intense physical agony, but also long-lasting damage. Victims often suffered permanent injuries and disfigurement, making it a tool of both punishment and terror. It was used primarily to punish those accused of crimes like theft, adultery, or heresy. Unlike some other torture devices that focused on external pain, the Pear of Anguish inflicted invisible but devastating internal damage. The slow expansion meant the pain increased gradually, prolonging the victim's suffering and creating a terrifying psychological effect. The thought of having this device inserted and expanded inside one's body was enough to break many victims before the physical torture even began. This device remains a chilling example of medieval cruelty and the extremes to which torturers would go to punish and intimidate. The head crusher was a terrifying medieval torture device designed to crush the skull slowly and painfully. It consisted of a metal frame that fit over the victim's head with a cap or plate on top and a lower bar or chin rest beneath the jaw. A screw mechanism connected the two parts, allowing the torturer to gradually tighten the device. As the screw was turned, the cap would press down on the skull while the lower bar held the chin in place. This slow tightening caused immense pressure on the skull and jaw, crushing bones and causing severe pain. The device could crack teeth, break the jaw, and eventually crush the entire skull, leading to death if the torturer continued turning the screw. The gradual nature of the head crusher made it especially cruel. Victims experienced escalating pain as their skull was slowly compressed. The device was often used to extract confessions or punish those accused of serious crimes. Witnesses would see the victim's suffering as the metal creaked and bones cracked, adding a terrifying spectacle to the punishment. Beyond physical agony, the head crusher also symbolized complete helplessness. The victim was completely immobilized, unable to defend themselves or escape the crushing pressure. It was a brutal reminder of the power torturers held over their victims and remains one of the most horrifying examples of medieval cruelty. The breaking wheel was one of the most feared and brutal torture and execution devices used during the medieval period. It was essentially a large wooden wheel, often reinforced with iron, designed to inflict maximum pain and suffering over an extended period. The victim was first tied or nailed, spread eagle onto the wheel, lying flat across the spokes. The executioner would then use a heavy iron bar or hammer to systematically break the bones of the victim's limbs. The goal wasn't to kill quickly, but to prolong suffering. The torturer began by smashing the arms and legs, often starting with the bones farthest from the torso and moving inward. Each strike shattered bone after bone, leaving the victim conscious and writhing in excruciating pain. After the limbs were broken, the wheel itself might be hoisted onto a tall pole or placed on the ground in a public place. The victim was then left there, often for hours or days, to slowly die from their injuries, blood loss, shock, or exposure. In some cases, the broken body was woven between the spokes of the wheel, making a horrific display. The breaking wheel served multiple purposes. Beyond inflicting unbearable physical agony, it was designed to publicly humiliate and terrorize others. The slow, torturous death became a spectacle meant to discourage crime and rebellion. The anticipation of each crushing blow added to the psychological torture, as victims knew every strike brought them closer to death but prolonged their suffering. This device highlights the extreme cruelty of medieval justice, where the goal was as much about making an example of the condemned as it was about punishment itself. The breaking wheel remains one of the most terrifying symbols of medieval brutality.